Hey guys, if you watched my Philco 38.7 restoration series, you may have heard me mention that I also had a Philco 38.10 with a very similar design, and I think I've showed this once or twice in older videos. This is the first antique radio that I ever got, and also the first one I ever restored, but I was pretty green when I did it, and I didn't replace all the caps, I didn't replace all the resistors, and I did not align it. It did play well though, and I used it for a few years, and then it got weaker and weaker and just pretty much stopped working. I think just some of the tubes wore out. Well, I figured I would pop this thing open and do a more thorough restoration, including the stuff I just mentioned. I also want to restuff the original metal caps. So this was the first cabinet that I ever restored, and I did an okay job. I certainly didn't screw it up, but I could do a better job. I don't know that I'm going to do that right now, but what I'd like to do someday is strip this down and use grain filler, which I did not use, and maybe a little toner on it. Front is photo finish, and there's a little bit of a blemish there. I didn't really know how to deal with that. Tip this back so you can see it better. And I used satin clear lacquer on it. Hindsight, probably should have used semi-gloss. It's kind of dull. I'm not so sure if you could put gloss over satin and make it shiny again. Otherwise, I could very carefully sand it down, I suppose. I can do a better job of that. Kind of crappy job there. I do have a touch-up kit now, and I could put some darker color over that. But again, don't know that I want to do the cabinet work right now. I also replaced the grill cloth, first time I ever did that. Didn't do a horrible job. There's a little bit of a wrinkle in it, right in the middle, but otherwise I'm fine with that. Oh, and I guess it's off a little bit towards the bottom there, but hey. Better than what the original was with a big hole in it, and all tattered. I suppose I could also put a vintagey power cord on it instead of this, but I'm actually out of plugs. I think I still have some 2 and 3 conductor reproduction cloth covered AC line cord, but I don't have plugs, so I'll have to order some up. Now this is one of those annoying designs where the speaker is hardwired to the chassis, but I've already gone ahead and unsoldered that from whenever I last worked on this. And looks like I put the chassis bolts back in, so I'll grab a screwdriver or wrench or whatever and pop this out. So I also tightened it down a bit too much, crushing the chassis mounts that should be floating. Either that or it's just the weight of the transformers mushed it down. I just had to pull off the knobs and take off the 4 chassis screws, and it came right out. I can see a few of the tubes are gone. I probably harvested them for other projects. Got a couple left in here. This uses those same type of shielded bases as the 38.7. The holes here, that's where the filter caps would go. I already cut one of them open a while ago for restuffing. Here's the other. I think this one goes over here. This would be your primary filter cap. And just like the 38.7, it's not grounded. The negative goes to the bias resistors. And then this on the other side. So the only difference between 38.7 and 38.10 really is right in here. The 38.7, for whatever reason, uses a 6J5 for the detector and then a 6K5 first audio. This uses a 6K7 to do both. It has 2 diodes they use for the detector, and then it's got a triode they use for the audio amp. I think I've got an original service bulletin for it around here somewhere. Otherwise, I'll pull up a reproduction. So I'm going to pop these shields off. I want to get a better look at the tubes that are in there. Okay, one of them, this guy, which I'm pretty sure is a 6Q7, is the original tube that came with the radio. And I bet this was the one that's weak. I know it's original because I think all the tubes that came with this radio had this label on it. Otherwise, this would be my next suspect. This would be the 6K7 I had so much fun with. 38.7. And the missing tubes would be a 5V4, I believe, and a 6F6 output tube, and a 6A8 local oscillator mixer tube. Okay, let's take a look underneath. Only the 38.7, this has a conventional tuning mechanism, so basically the same filter or variable tuning cap, but this has a dial on the front. It's in pretty good shape. I think this is an original, not a reproduction. It's a bit dusty. Never ever use water-based cleaners on these. They will just take the ink right off. I already took this tuner apart and repacked the bearings and all that, so the mechanism is very nice with the vernier action. So this actually has a coarse and a fine tuning knob to assist in tuning. Smaller inner one being fine and the outer one being coarse. Right, let's take a peek underneath and see where I left off. Oh, I'll have to reattach that. Not entirely sure where I took it off. Might have been to clean a chassis, or maybe I wanted to get the rust off of that. You can see when I did this initially, I just tacked in new electrolytics here and there. And there's the new capacitors, and I guess I have done them all. I know I did an initial restoration, and then a while ago I started doing the second restoration phase, which I never got around to finishing, so that's got to be why some of this work is just hanging here. And well, now I'm going to finish it off. So see, most of the original resistors are in there as well. So it looks oh so similar because it's essentially identical to the 38.7 underneath. Same coils, band switches, has the same tuning range. It's all the same resistor capacitor layout down in here and up through here. Trying to remember, why did I disconnect that? Either this is a replacement and I haven't wired it in yet, or I was going to replace it. This much I can tell you though. Philco used controls that were a little different than the norm in that they're not half round, there is a flat, but it's not that prominent. So this is a standard replacement where it is a half moon. Knobs are super loose, or would be super loose, but somebody put a big glob of solder on there. Might have been me, might have been like that when I got it. I'm not sure because it is a used pot. But anyways, that's just one simple way to get a Philco knob to hang on there tight, is to put a big old glob. Actually, it's not quite thick enough, so I'd have to slop a little more on there. Okay, so where do I want to start? Well, say I got to rebuild these. So that's one thing. I'll do this one first. It's already been gutted. 2 caps go in here. I'll replace those 2 and it mounts right there. I think I'll replace some of these too, like this guy where the leads weren't long enough and I had to put curly Q extensions on there. I've got some axial caps that are long enough. I'll start doing all the resistors. Even though I've made some good progress down in this area, mostly replacing the old out-of-spec resistors with these nice new Vichy 2 and 3 watt brown resistors. I like them better than the blue because they look more like old carbon types and the colored bands are easier to read, but I did need a 20 ohm here, so I had to resort to one of the blue guys. Alright, so what I'm working on now is the filter cap, the first one, the main one that comes right after the rectifier, the 12 microfarad guy there, number 45. Now originally they used the positive on this as a tie point. Originally this came through this black insulating material and had a steel terminal crimped onto the end of it. And this 10K resistor this wire from the rectifier and this wire going to the field coil all connected there. Well, I would use an unused terminal if I had any, but they're all used. So I could add another terminal strip just for that one tie point, but what I'm going to try doing is to reuse this capacitor. So what I'm thinking of doing is using something like a piece of brass tubing or thick copper wire, something conductive that's sturdy, that I can insert back down through here. I'll put some heat shrink tubing over it to aid in insulating it, and I can just use some hot glue to secure it, attach the new capacitor's positive terminal to one end and use the other end for a tie point. But I still need to deal with ground. So I could try soldering inside to the aluminum with the new capacitor's negative lead, but I've never had much success for that because I just don't have the right type of compounds you need to allow soldering to aluminum. Plus, I'd kind of rather keep this floating because this cannot touch the chassis. Originally they had this piece of cardboard over there, and then there was a metal strip that ran up underneath here, and it made pressure contact against the body of this, and then there was another lug there. So what I've seen some guys do is simply drill a small hole through the bottom of the capacitor and run the negative lead through that with some insulated wire. So I think I'll do that. You know, this modern PVC type insulated wire, this kind of stuff. So if I drill a hole just the right diameter for this to fit through, I'll have my ground lead that's isolated from the can, and then when I go to attach the can back to the chassis, I will keep this on there for appearance sake, but I won't be worried about it failing and this metal ever making contact with the chassis, because it just won't matter. Here's the rebuilt filter cap, just as I planned. I drilled a hole, attached an extension wire to the negative lead, put a little heat shrink tubing around it for some extra protection as it passes through that hole. The positive attached to that bit of brass tubing, which I coated with solder. Put a couple layers of heat shrink tubing around it for insulation, and then hot glued it. So that's my positive, the wire is my negative. And I put that paper sleeve back on for appearance sake and attached it to this mounting clamp. I'll run a machine screw and nut through here, tighten it down a little bit, and then it attaches to the chassis like so. I'll make my connections down below and eventually reattach this top. And if anybody ever needs to get back in there to replace that cap in 40 or 50 years, they can just pop this top off and fish it out and replace it. I'm working on rebuilding the other filter capacitor now, which is a 2-section cap. It looks something like this originally. Metal can with 3 wires coming out the bottom. I just sliced this open and took out the insides. I'm going to put 3 caps inside with extension wires attached and hold it all back together with the clamp and maybe a little aluminum tape if needed. So what I did is I connected the 2 common negatives together and then attached 3 extension wires, a little heat shrink tubing over the positive terminals where they attach, just to reduce any chance of anything shorting to anything else. And now I'm putting a little sleeve over each individual cap, and then I'm going to put a bigger sleeve over the outer ones. Oh, and thanks to Johnny, he noticed I'd mentioned in an earlier video that I was running out of large diameter heat shrink tubing, and he kindly sent me some, so thanks for that. And the reason I'm doing this is I used to just, if there were 2, 3, 4 section caps, I would just bunch them all together and wrap some electrical tape around it, because I assumed that the outer metal can was connected to the negative terminal. That is not the case. I think it was at some point in time, but on the caps I've been buying lately, it's not connected to anything. So this outer metal can, it's got the plastic around it and it's exposed at the top, put a probe on that negative on the top and touch it to the negative lead, no, it's 4 meg. It is not connected to that. The can is not negative. It's not going to the positive either. It's floating. So just something to be aware of there. Alright, so I'm going to put this sleeve over the other cap. Get this open. Seems to be a little bit thicker walled heat shrink tubing than I usually use, but it's the right diameter, so that's what I'm going to use. Alright. Maybe a little paranoid, putting all the extra layers around these, but hey, I've got the materials on hand. Doesn't take much time, so why not? Alright, so each cap is individually sealed, and now, let's see, this stuff, I think the red might be big enough. Just too small. Alright, it'll be the clear stuff then. Or maybe I got a... No, this is the same as the red. Alright, it's gonna be this. That much. Kind of nice to use clear for this, so after the fact I can see which colored wires are going to what, in case I forget. So right now the green is going to the smaller capacitor, the 4 microfarad, and the orange is the larger one. So that's about all it's going to shrink. Alright. Alright, let that cool down a bit. Thread it through the base and mount it inside. I know there's a bit of goo in here too, so I better go clean that out. Okay, I think I'm done underneath the chassis, at least enough to try powering it up. I've got the last 2 electrolytics wired in, replaced all the resistors, and double checked my wiring. So, what I need to do next is dig up some tubes, populate those sockets, get the speaker back over here, hook it up, and try to fire this set up. I took the speaker out of the cabinet and reconnected it, got the radio plugged in, so we are all ready for a power-up test. Turned off, turn my PR57 on, drop down to about 115, and here we go. Pilot lights on. It's good because this is in parallel with the tube filament, so if it's lit, I know I'm not killing the power transformer, and the rectifier tube isn't freaking out or anything. There's some life out of the speaker. Don't know what band I'm on, but let's see. Alright, not much of anything. Maybe I'm on the shortwave band. Let's see. Of course, Philco 38.7 has 3 tone positions. This just has 2. Okay. Alright, so got some work to do. First, let's just do the simplest thing, which is to touch the top of the grid cap, see if we get a hum. Yep. That would be the 6Q7. So, good indicator that the output tube is okay, and the speaker. Here. A little something. That'd be the 6K7, so likely this is okay as well. So maybe something up here. It's the 6A8 local oscillator mixer tube. Alright, well, I think that's a good start. So I've got it recapped and resistors replaced and powered back up, and nothing went up in smoke, and we got some hum out of the speaker. So in the next installment I'll start the troubleshooting.